Halftime show. Terry Ford, Ed Bird has shown up. Dave's doing community service for another one of his crazy weekends out that we can't speak of. That, I tell you what, man, that they still do E! True Hollywood stories, because if they ever do them, they do one on Dave. That'd be pretty good. Things he does when he's not here. So Dave will be back on Monday. Our buddy Ed Bird is here to run the ship in Dave's absence. Tyler, of course, rolled in the morning show. Bill took the day off, so instead of Tyler hanging around here all day, he's done till Monday, where he'll also be filling in for Bill. And then Elijah will fill in for Bill on Tuesday. So, and then we'll just stop some random person walking down the road to fill in for Bill after that. Baseball tonight, 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock first pitch, South Carolina, Florida. We've talked about this over and over and over and over and over. South Carolina has no margin for error. You got to get 13 wins, pretty much is kind of the magic number to put yourself in position to play in the postseason. South Carolina can lose one more game all year to get into that position in the SEC. So that's what they're facing. And they're doing it without, most likely, definitely without Ethan Petrie, it feels like. And we'll see what happens with Nathan Hall. So your two best hitters you might not have for this series. And offensively, it's not like you have a depth of guys who have been consistently bringing it on offense. Kazmar's short. Henry is, he's really kicked it into gear after a slow start, but he doesn't bring you the power that Petrie and Hall do. But it's a lineup where guys will have to be stepping up now to hopefully help out. But that's been a thing this year besides Petrie and Hall. Again, like I said, Kazmar's been good after struggling to begin the year. Other guys have had moments where they've been productive. Young Mr. Hollins at first base, the freshman, you like him because he's been good offensively, and you figure he's just going to get better as time goes on. But he's not a guy that's going to bring you a lot of power numbers either. So it's been one of those seasons where you really leaned on two guys. And those two guys might not be in the lineup this week. So we'll see where it goes. Florida's been playing a lot better baseball. They've now put themselves in position to possibly make the postseason after just a horrid start of the year for the Gators. They're now at 8 wins with 3 SEC series left to play. So if you're looking at 9 games, you need 5 wins, basically a 5-4 run for Florida, and they'll make it back to the postseason, which, again, after their terrible start, no matter where it goes from there, that's kind of at least saving something after what you went through last year. And a team, by the way, who went to the College World Series last year and had an opportunity to possibly win the whole thing. So Florida coming in playing well. South depends on Dylan Eskew's health. And of course, Evans through in the midweek. So I don't think Evans would be in the picture. So you're hoping Eskew can go. That's where you're at. It's where you're at. But flipping back to Florida real quick, the Gators right now sit in the SEC at 8-13. Like I said, 30-16 overall, 6-7 on the road. They're a 500 road, a little bit under 500 road team. And what they have coming up besides South Carolina, they'll do South Florida in the midweek, 3 against Texas. Ooh. And then 3 against Alabama. Texas series is in Austin. The Alabama series is at home in Gainesville. Alabama this year has been good. The Tide are 12-9 in league. Texas has been stupid, 19-3 in the SEC. So Florida's, it's not going to be easy, but Florida's got to find a way to pull 5. They got to go 5-4. So really, the Gators are looking at they've got to at least win the series against South Carolina here at Founders. So if they can get 2, then they need 3 in the next 2 series. So you're playing Alabama and Texas, but if you can pull a couple against South Carolina, that gives you some, give you a little bit of a head start as you're trying to then go in and handle the business of getting your next 3 wins. So we'll see what happens with Florida there, but that's where the Gators sit right now. And of course, South Carolina, like we said, 5-16 in the league. You got to get 8 wins in the next 9 conference games. We'll see. It's tall order. Obviously, if you're putting money on it, you're putting money on a no. But again, we'll see where it goes. So that starts tonight. Brandon Stone taking the ball for South Carolina. All right, it's official. Nolan Hay will be a Gamecock. The offensive lineman from Incarnate Word has committed to South Carolina. Hay's numbers, if you look at Pro Football Focus grade, was 80.6. That was Hay's blocking grade. Over 2,000 career snaps. Oklahoma State, Washington State, and Colorado were chasing this dude. So some other schools in the power leagues were interested. Hay ends up being a Gamecock. He'll go in a very crowded offensive line room, just adding depth. And Hay played every position on the offensive line except left tackle in his career. So it's a good get, for, if nothing else, for depth purposes. Right now you look at, the tackle positions. Josiah Thompson, your hope is he just gets a ton better in his sophomore year. And then you've got Case and Henry, and you're hoping, I guess, same thing with Case and Henry on some levels. Can Case and Henry improve? Josiah Thompson struggled, obviously. We knew it was going to happen. A freshman in the SEC playing left tackle. That was going to have some ugly moments. It did. Case and Henry also really struggled at times at right tackle. But you're hoping both of those guys, after their first year as starters, they're going to obviously be better in year 2. You lost your starting center and your 2 guards. Right now it feels like Boaz Stanley has the lead at center. The guard thing's all over the place. You got transfer portal guys. You got a couple of dudes like Tree and Trove who are looking to maybe grab a starting spot. Tree obviously would be moving in from tackle. It's a crowded spot to see who's going to win those positions. But you got a lot of possible pieces. Just got to find 5. But you do have some depth in case, you have problems with either performance, injury. You're good in this situation. So that's what's going on there. Colin Hay is a Gamecock, committed yesterday after his visit. His visit was like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and he committed late on Thursday. So that's a good get for South Carolina. And, of course, our next thing with South Carolina football will be when we get to SEC Media Days in July. Shane will, by the way, I don't know if you even talked about this. Shane will speak on Monday. He'll be the first speaker in the afternoon session on Monday at SEC Media Days. Last year he was one of the Monday speakers as well in the morning, but this time he'll open up the afternoon session. You know what's interesting, and it hit me today that, oh my God, the Kentucky Derby's here. And I won't lie, it just kind of snuck up on me. It has become such a non-thing for me personally in the world. And just the Triple Crown races. It's almost like, wow. It used to be such a thing. I remember growing up, there were Kentucky Derby watch parties. Now, again, I grew up in Baltimore where, horse racing is kind of a thing because of the Preakness. But still, I remember people having watch parties for the Triple Crown races, especially the Derby and the Preakness. And now it's just like, okay. It's like, hey, well, the Kentucky Derby's here. And look, this just happens in sports. If you look at, I remember seeing a thing talking about last century. Wow, how old do we sound, Ed Bird? Last century. The first 50 years of the 1900s, the most popular sports were horse racing, boxing, and baseball. Think about that for a minute. Run that through your head. Here we are 75 years later. I mean, boxing and horse racing are niche sports, and baseball is no longer the America's pastime. It sits there with the NBA, depending on what town and market you live in, to be the number 2 most popular professional sport, far behind the NFL. And college football is more popular than baseball or basketball. It's just weird how stuff changes, and just the tastes of, the world change. And what was so popular, wildly popular, by the way, 75 years ago is now, it's not like no one cares. They do, but just nowhere near the level they used to. And it did. I was like sitting around, and I just kind of half thinking about it. I'm like, oh my God, the Kentucky Derby. How about that? Remember, there was some juice for a while because no one had won a Triple Crown in such a long time. And then when that finally happened a few years ago, I was like, okay, that's the last thing. Some people were like this, okay, that was the last thing I cared about horse racing. I'm done. We're good. But yeah, man, it's like the Kentucky Derby is here, and I haven't even been paying attention. Because again, growing up where I grew up, you kind of paid attention to the Derby, kind of sets everything up for the Preakness. And I have not even been putting an eyeball on it at all. Man, wow. So anyway, just hit me earlier today, Ed Bird. I'm like, oh my God, the Derby's here. It's May. All right. We're going to get some Paul Maneri. I'll let you hear the South Carolina baseball coach talk about a few different things. He'll give us an injury update on Ethan Petrie and Nathan Hall. That is coming up next here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Ed Bird's here. We're going till 3 on the game. Rolling the halftime show up until 3 o'clock here on the game. Florida coming to Founders to take on South Carolina, 3-game series. Again, Florida is trying to get 5 more wins to reach the magic 13 number. South Carolina's got to get 8. You know, the Gators' hope is to win 2 here. Then you're going to need 3 in some way, shape, or form in the last. So you have to basically split with Texas and Alabama. So that is where we're at. Are we ready for some sound, Ed Bird? We good? All right, Paul Maneri talking to the media. First, we'll get an injury update on Ethan Petrie and Nathan Hall. Here's the coach.
Ethan is out for the weekend, obviously, and I still don't even know about Nathan. You know, his heel did not respond well the first couple days of this week, and I haven't seen him yet today. Talked to him on the phone, but he literally was just getting out of bed, so he didn't really know how it feels. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that he'll be ready to go for tomorrow.
10 games. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the bottom line is play with the guys that are available, you know, and we've had. I never like to talk about injuries and make excuses or anything like that, but we've had some pretty important injuries to us this year that who knows how much of a difference it'd make if Eli Jersenbeck had stayed healthy and Talmadge had stayed healthy and Rocky was at full strength, and you just never know. But you know, it is what it is. You know, you play with the guys that are available to you, and you do the very best that you can. But I just wish I had better news on Petrie, and wish I knew for sure that I could tell you Hall was going to play.
All right, so basically, no Ethan Petrie, obviously. Might not have Ethan Petrie for the rest of the year. We talked about that yesterday. And with Hall, I mean, we'll just see. Can he get out there and run well enough to play? Here is Coach Maneri. We'll get cut to here, Ed Bird, replacing Ethan Petrie's production in the lineup.
You do the best you can with the next guys, you know, and there's a reason why he's Ethan Petrie. You know, he's better than most. You know, he's one of the top players in the country, and you know, you can't just go say, okay, well, we'll just grab this guy and fill the hole. It'd be like if Sellers went down, and you know, would your team take a little bit of a hit on that? Of course you would. You know, it's just the way it works. But yeah, that's why it's important to have depth and have, you know, all those pieces. And we'll get there. You know, it's just going to take a little time.
That is the thing. I mean, it's you know, you got to have the depth. Got to have guys who aren't going to be Ethan Petrie, obviously, but guys who can just be productive, stepping up, which has been an issue that we talked about in the opening segment. It's a consistency thing. There have been times, you know, whether it's a carry-on, you know, or whoever the case, they've had good weeks, maybe 2 good weeks, not just one, but maybe a couple. But it's just the consistency of guys, you know, being productive has been an issue in this lineup besides Petrie and Nathan Hall. All right, here is let's get to cut 5, Ed Bird. Obviously, Florida coming to town. Here is Coach Maneri's scouting report on the Gators.
Yeah, they're a typical Florida team. You know, they hit a lot of home runs. They got good athletes. They got good arms on the mound. It's kind of befuddles me why, you know, they struggled and like they did, to be honest with you, because it's certainly not a lack of talent. And you know, I think their pitching numbers aren't good, but they've been pitching a lot better. And you know, I think they found a closer in Clemente. Their number 1 guy, Peterson's he's one of the top pitchers in the league. You know, Aiden King has given them a real lift. I think he went there as a non-scholarship player, a walk-on, and he's developed into a nice starting pitcher for them. So, yeah, listen, I've coached against Florida for a lot of years, and it's never easy, and it never will be easy. You know, they get the pick of the litter and maybe the most fertile baseball state in the country, so they ought to be really good every year. And Kevin, you know, he's had some years where they haven't started great, and yet they finished strong, which I admire about him, you know. So it'd be good to see Kevin. I haven't talked to him in a few years, so.
You know, Florida started off as bad as you can. Swept by Tennessee in their first SEC series. Swept by Georgia in their second SEC series. Lost the first 2 games of their series to Ole Miss. They lost their first 8 SEC games. did the Gators. But to their credit, since then, they kind of righted the ship, and they've gone, 8-5 in the SEC since. It makes sense. 8, 5, 13, carry the 1, multiply. Yeah, I should have got my phone out. But they've gone 8-5 since that 1-8 start. Or 7-5, because they have 8 wins. So 7-5 since that start. So it was a rough way to go, man, if you're Florida. If you look at the SEC stats real quick with the Gators, they're number 5 in the conference in batting average. Number 4, tied with Tennessee at 305 batting average. And they hit long balls. They have 76 home runs, which puts them in the upper half of the conference. And Florida, when it comes to scoring runs, they're also kind of in the middle. But they do hit home runs. They hit for a high average. So it's a good offensive team. They walk a good amount, 214 walks this year. So they're going to be tough to deal with offensively. Pitching-wise, they've had some. It has not been typical Florida pitching as the Gators are used to. They're sitting 14th in the league in ERA. So the hope is if you're South Carolina, you get something going on against the Florida pitching staff, and maybe your pitchers can step up, have a good weekend, and you can find a way to at least win the series. Because obviously, and we've talked about it a lot, South Carolina offensively, 15th in the conference in batting average, lower half of the conference in runs scored, near the bottom in home runs. You know, Gamecocks, walks, I think a little bit below average as well in the conference. It's been a really tough year offensively. But we've looked so much at the pitching, which is even worse at 15th. Look, the stats aren't pretty. They aren't. 15th in batting average, 15th in ERA. You go in deeper dive stats, also below average. It's just been a rough road. And no one's going to try to sugarcoat it. Yes, there's been some injuries, but also, you just thought this team would be better. No one was thinking they were going to win the national title or maybe even go to Omaha, but we thought this team would be better than it's been. And, who knows if you have Eli Jersenbeck healthy and a couple other pitchers or some position players who went out with injuries. But you can also, I guess, say a lack of depth of guys to be able to step up, whether they just aren't ready, they aren't good enough, whatever the case. It's been a rough go, man. Absolutely. All right, let's get another one in here, Ed Bird, real quick. Cut 3, Coach Maneri's goals for the final 10 games. Again, cut 3.
Oh, I just want to see us, I've said this many times, no matter, what day we have if we have a tough loss or whatever, we're just never going to give up. And our players know that. You're going to see, look, they're still hustling up to the cage. They're still disciplined, doing everything right. Nobody's hanging them up, We're going to play this season right out to the very end. And I think you owe it to your university, you owe it to your state, you owe it to the fans that come to the game, that care about the program. Nobody's happy with, the final results of what we've got. I shouldn't say final results. Nobody's happy with, where we stand in the SEC standings and all those kinds of things. But you still have to get up every morning and have pride in what you do and go out there and do the very best you can. We'll analyze it all after the season's over. Where were our areas that need upgrading, and where, what do we do going forward? When you take over a program, there's limited stuff that you can do to make the program better. I went through this at LSU. I went through it everywhere. The Air Force Academy. I went through it at St. Thomas. It's a hard process to go through, but it also makes it that much more rewarding when you get it the way you want it to be. But people aren't that patient. They want to see now. And I feel bad that we haven't delivered in the way that most people would want it to be delivered. And like I said, we'll analyze it later where we need to improve, and we're working. Obviously, you can see the young man over there around the batting cage. He had hit a lot of home runs before he got hit by a pitch the other day and broke his hand. So, So we're gonna keep working at it, but we got 10 games left, and I'm excited about those 10 games. We got a good Florida Gator team coming in. They're always so talented. We go to Auburn, who's having a great year. We've got another midweek game, and then we finish with a school that I know a little bit about.
I mean, the one thing that we can say, I think if you've watched this baseball team this year, is they haven't given up. They've had some crippling losses, haven't they? Losses where you go, okay, they're probably going to go another game the rest of the year, man. That was, whew, talk about a punch to the lower extremities. Oh, my God. But they bounced back. And then they, like the A&M series, the way things went in that series, but South Carolina kept battling. I mean, you got swept. There were moments in that series you were like, whew, how do you come back from that? But there's been no quit in this baseball team. That's the one thing. And we've talked about the parallels between this team and the men's basketball team is kind of eerie. That squad never quit either. And that's a testament to Lamont Paris and Paul Maneri for being able to keep these guys engaged and giving maximum effort. Look, it doesn't give you more wins on the scoreboard. It doesn't make this year better. It doesn't. But, there are teams that go through these struggles that they all just give up. They tune out, they shut down, they just go, okay, I want to get in the transfer portal and go somewhere for next year. But we haven't seen that with this baseball team. So that is a thing. And we'll see where they go in the final 10 games of the season. And all you can do now is start, trying to spoil some things from others for what they can do in the postseason. All right, again, baseball tonight, 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock first pitch with Florida and South Carolina. Gamecocks and Gators again on Saturday, 3:45, everything gets going, and then 1:15 on Sunday. Halftime show, just in case you just woke up. J.J. Redick, the head coach of the Lakers, had a message for his team, but it doesn't take a genius to know what member of his team he was talking about. We'll let you hear the sound next here on the halftime show. Just in case you just woke up is next on the game. Just in case you just woke up on the halftime show, Terry Ford, Ed Bird hanging around with us today. Turn my headphones up. I got to go buy some real earbuds. I really do. I'm using all these ones I've ripped off from hotels. You know, the ones that give you, like, you go to the fitness center at the hotel, they give you, like, these earbuds to use in case you need them. And I gotta go get some real earbuds. You get what you pay for, Ed Bird. So all you're doing is using the headphones from the hotel. I gotta get some. I gotta go out. I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and purchase some earbuds from a real place. All right. Just in case you just woke up, this just broke. Greg Popovich, who, again, he had that stroke earlier in the basketball season, took a leave of absence from San Antonio. Word is that Popovich, and this is not a shock, will no longer be the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. He will transition to a full-time role as the team's president of basketball operations. Now, Popovich has really been running the show in San Antonio since the mid-'90s, but he became the head coach 96-97 season, took over for Bob Hill. And, I mean, look, it wasn't like Bob Hill was terrible, because he wasn't. But the team struggled 96-97. Then all of a sudden they got this guy named Tim Duncan to go with this guy named David Robinson. And the Spurs took off, won 5 NBA championships. Like I said, David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard. I mean, the team they were really good for a really long time. It was one of the most not talked about dynasties in professional sports. Since, Duncan and Parker and Ginobili and Leonard left, obviously, I don't care how good of a coach you are, you can't win the Kentucky Derby on a donkey. And the Spurs, not to be mean, personnel-wise, have, in the context of the Kentucky Derby, been a donkey. They have Victor Wembanyama now. We'll see where that goes, because he's a generational talent if he can stay healthy. But Popovich, one of the greatest coaches in the history of the game. Over 1,400 regular season wins, which is the number one in NBA history. 3-time NBA Coach of the Year. That ties Don Nelson and Pat Riley for the most ever. Again, Popovich had that mild stroke on November 2nd. Didn't return to the team for the rest of the season. We will see what goes on with the coaching deal. Will they keep Mitch Johnson in, who's been the interim head coach? Remember, San Antonio was a borderline playoff type team until Wembanyama was hurt. So we'll see where San Antonio goes when it comes to the coaching. But Popovich will now be the president of basketball operations, and he'll make the decision on the next head coach. But that just came in. Greg Popovich will step away from coaching the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, Popovich is 76 years old. And you go through the minor stroke. Look, I don't have to tell you, you follow sports. Coaching's a grind, man. Absolute grind. And as you get older, you don't have the energy. And then you throw that in with the fact you had a mild stroke. So to the surprise, really, of no one, Greg Popovich will now just concentrate on being the full-time president of basketball operations in San Antonio. All right. The NBA playoffs kind of dominate some of the news or things happening around the NBA playoffs. So the Lakers get knocked out by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota dominated the paint. The Lakers have no center. Minnesota dominated the paint, whether it was offensive rebounds, second chance points. Just there was no rim protector, and the T-Wolves just lived and thrived at the basket or going to the basket or creating offense by driving the paint. So the Lakers cut 10. The head coach of the Lakers said the other thing his team has to do, hit it.
The work that's required in an off season to be in championship shape. And, we have a ways to go as a roster. And certainly there are individuals that were in phenomenal shape. There's certainly other ones that could have been in better shape. That's where my mind goes immediately is we have to get in championship shape.
Wonder who he was talking about. Let me sit here and think about it for a minute. LeBron James, he's 41 years old and probably has 2% body fat. Who could he have been talking about? Luka Doncic, maybe? The guy that hasn't seen his feet in 5 years? The guy that's had people buckle his belt? The guy who's on a donut and beer diet? Oh, and by the way, the guy who might be the most skilled offensive player in the world. Yes, he's talking to Luka, is J.J. Redick. He's not saying, hey, Luka, you got to get in shape there, lard butt. What he's saying, the team has to get in better shape. Because you don't throw your guy under the bus in front of microphones to the media, especially the guy that's going to be the face of your franchise. You just don't. But the thing that kills me over the last couple of days, and maybe because I pay attention to the NBA way too much, if you follow basketball, and then all of a sudden all these people are going crazy, boy, that Luka Doncic, well, he's out of shape. Yeah, we know. Boy, that guy, he really didn't play much defense. We know. Luka was out of shape last year and didn't play much defense, and Dallas got to the NBA Finals because they surrounded Luka and Kyrie Irving with 3 high-level defensive players who could pick up the slack for 2 dudes who either couldn't play D or didn't want to play D. So, I mean, this idea that all of a sudden the whole world goes, well, Luka Doncic, he's not in the greatest shape in the world. Thank you. I appreciate it. So that's a big duh if you follow the NBA. The other thing about it with Luka is, look, man, you're 26 years old and you're tubby. Is that a nice way to say it? You're tubby. Am I being nice? I'm being nice. You're tubby, but you're a phenomenal player. But you know what? When you're 32 or 33, being tubby, you don't move as easy than when you're 26. I know these things. I was 26 once. I was 32 once, even though I still look 26. If you're watching the video stream, you're laughing out loud right now. So at the end of the day, what works for you at 26 when you're tubby doesn't work when you're 32 and tubby. It ain't working. So Luka, if he wants to be the player that we all know he can be, dude's got to get serious and get in shape. You just do. Because that's what, I mean, look, he's got the greatest example in his locker room. Dude named LeBron James. And if you're Luka, I hope Luka Doncic is self-aware enough to figure this out. If you're Luka, shouldn't you walk over to LeBron James and say, hey, dude, can you help me out with this diet and exercise thing? Obviously, by the look of me, I'm struggling. Obviously, by the idea I need a bra, I'm struggling. Help me. That would be the smart thing to do. We'll see, because Luka, it's hard to tell someone who has been so phenomenal at something that they've got to change something, right? Luka Doncic has been this size for a good bit since he's been in the league, right? And he's been arguably, if not the best, one of the 3 best offensive players in the NBA. He's incredibly gifted. So it's hard to go, hey, man, you're incredibly gifted. By the way, you average 30 points a game in the playoffs. Even though you're not the thinnest guy in the world, you still were crushing it. But if you truly want to be what you can be, which is a Hall of Fame generational iconic talent, my man, you ever heard of Diet Coke? You ever heard of a salad? That's where it's got to get for Luka. And we'll see if he gets there. Now, this does not say Nico Harrison in Dallas was right. That still was a dumb trade. If you have Luka Doncic, you have to do everything in your power to get this guy to understand the value of getting himself in shape. Because this guy is so stupid, incredibly crazy talented, you can't give up on him. You can't give up on this kind of a talent. So Dallas was still wrong in making that trade. But Nico Harrison's sitting back right now at his house going, yeah, see? Uh-huh. Yeah. Anybody want to give me any heat and smoke now? But still, it was a bad trade. Just was a bad trade. But that was J.J. Redick talking about the Lakers. And he was talking to one guy. And I'll give J.J. Redick credit for not throwing Luka under the bus. As a coach, you don't do it. bottom of the SEC, offensively near the bottom of the SEC. I mean, defensively, they've been above average team, except, of course, that final game against Kentucky where they really struggled. But there's a lot to look at here. I mean, you can point fingers to pitching coach, hitting instructor, head coach, players. I mean, it goes everywhere, just to be honest. I don't think it's just, you can say Terry Rooney should have done a better job. Sure, you can. Monty Lincoln did a better job with the hitters. Paul Maneri did a better job coaching. Players could have done a better job. It just, when you've had this kind of a season, there's no one that walks away without blame. And you really have to sit down and just reassess what went wrong and how do we fix it? What do we have to do not to ever let this happen again? Because that's when you really fix it. I'll give you a little insight. One of my kids was doing a class project, a senior project, and had to go to a courthouse, part of the senior project, to, do something as part of the project. And you'll love this, Edberg. He's going to the courtroom. He's leaving in plenty of time. He's all suited up and ready to roll. Hair's fixed up. Looks great. Pulls up at the courthouse. Gets ready to get out of the car, looks down. Realizes he's wearing Crocs. Not his dress shoes. Forgot to change out his Crocs, put his dress shoes on. Now, he learned from that mistake. Nothing terrible happened, but he had to reassess. And his reassessment was this: before I leave the house, I got to look down and make sure I got my shoes on. These things happen. We all make mistakes. We all screw up. And this year was a huge mistake, and it was a lot of screwing up for South Carolina baseball. And I know what makes it worse is the expectation of you bringing a Hall of Fame head coach who has had success, at Notre Dame, took Notre Dame to Omaha, took LSU to Omaha. Now, and especially with the criticism of Mark Kingston, you go, okay, got a guy, got a dude. No one saw this coming. This was a much worse season than anyone could have imagined. I think that's what makes this even more of a bummer is, look, no one was sitting around, getting reservations at the Omaha Hilton, but I think people thought this was going to be a much better baseball team and maybe even better than some of the quote-unquote experts. So there was a couple people, Kendall Rogers thought South Carolina could be a sleeper, but overall South Carolina was not in the top 25 going into the season. But I don't think anyone thought this was going to be happening. And you just have to sit back and reassess. Basically, South Carolina wore Crocs all year. So what do you do now? Well, you make sure you don't wear the Crocs again. That's a good idea. But the second thing is, how do you make it better? How do you learn from your mistake? How do you say, okay, Coach Maneri, I mean, it was very controversial when Maneri here recently said that he, did not realize just how good this league was. And people went, what? Really? And yeah, I mean, is it a statement where you go, huh? But forget that for now. You can't fix that. What you got to fix is, moving forward, you don't underestimate the league anymore. You know what the SEC is about. You know what it takes to win. You watched it all year long. You saw what good teams do in 2025, whether it's pitching, offense, defense. You saw what good teams do. You saw the type of players you need to go win. So now you got to put all that knowledge you picked up this year and put it into motion. You got to go get the right players you can win with 2025. You got to understand what it takes to win in today's baseball. You got to you got to be open enough to look at your philosophies that you've used for a long time. Okay, what do I have to evolve? What do I have to change? What's different? How do I have to open my mind to be flexible in what I think, because maybe I need to think different? All these things have to happen, and then you come back in 2026 ready to rock and roll, not to repeat what you saw in 2025. But yeah, like the texter, you're not wrong. Terry Rooney, absolutely. You can throw shade there, but you throw shade everywhere because the hitters weren't very good in totality. So it's not just one coach. The team wasn't very good. So you look at the head coach, you look at players, you look at everything, because all of this together made this season what it was. It wasn't just one person, but now, because I think Palmineri, in my opinion, will be back. So you're a Hall of Fame head coach. You've seen year one and what's going on in today's baseball. How do you fix it? It's that simple. So that's what's next for this program. All right, football, more football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Also, we're going to yip with our buddy Scott Hamilton, columnist from the Post-Courier. That's coming at 1:15 here on the halftime show on the game. Playing a little Steven Spielberg with the camera there. Now they might need to see the top of my head, but fix that a little bit. Halftime show. That's the thing. We always say this. Look, we're just a bunch of radio goobers doing video streaming. Ed Bird might be the most seasoned TV professional we have here. We're just a bunch of radio goofs. We're going to do live streaming because that's the way our business and our world's going. So we, with our pals from Integrated Media and our buddies from Shepherd's Glass, we got this video stream going. But every now and then, you know, because we're all just doing this thing. You know, and so every now and then we go, wow, we got to fix that. It just hit me. I probably should have did it during the break, Ed, but I looked up and I went, wow, my head's cut off. Not that's a bad thing, but so I figure I just fixed that. And you know, it's one of those things where you see something, just go do it, and you don't think for a second. That's what I just did. Hey, let's fix the video camera. Guess what? We're on the air, goof, but I did it anyway. So now you get to see the 6 hairs on the top of my head. It's pretty exciting, Ed. Pretty exciting. All right, we talk football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We'll change it up a little bit at 1:15. Yap with our buddy Scott Hamilton from the Post and Courier. I think he's the only columnist left in the state, like sports columnist. I miss good sports columnists. And Scott's really good. Like, I make fun of Scott all the time. We've known each other for a bit. But I think that's one of the things that it's sad to see go away, or maybe because I grew up on it. I don't know. And we always like the stuff we grew up on. But I love just really good opinionated writing by a sports columnist. And that's kind of going the way of the dinosaur, which is a shame. I mean, newspapers are, because, again, they're figuring, how do we make money off this thing now? Because they got this deal called the internet. But it's just a shame, because a good opinionated columnist for a newspaper, it just was, I always thought was phenomenal. When I was younger. So anyway, Scott Hamilton, Post and Courier, 1:15 here on the halftime show. So we yap a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, again, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Nolan Hay is a Gamecock. Offensive lineman from Incarnate Word. Picked South Carolina over Oklahoma State, Washington State, and Colorado. Hay had a good year. Pro Football Focus blocking grade of 80.6. That's good. It's really good. Hayes played every position but left tackle. You figure he's probably going to play, or at least in the beginning, probably start off at guard, center, in the interior. Because, again, you feel like you're okay, or you hope you're going to be okay at tackle, with two returning guys who will start their second season as starters in Josiah Thompson and Casey Henry. Had an interesting comment on the live stream at the Game TV radio, that the person popping the comment in said he sees Casey Henry more as a guard. It might be right before it's all said and done. Casey Henry struggled last year, and we all knew Josiah Thompson would, but I think most folks, because Casey Henry's been in the program longer than Josiah Thompson, you thought Casey Henry might be a little farther along the developmental curve, and it didn't seem that way. And, you know, the comment in the chat might be correct before it's all said and done. But Henry will go back out there, it feels like, a right tackle. Josiah Thompson, a left tackle. Boaz Stanley right now feels like the leader in the clubhouse at center going into summer. But the guard spots are wide open still. Got a couple of transfer portal guys who are going to compete with a couple of holdovers who have been now, this will be year 3 in the program with Tree and Trove. So we'll see. But Nolan Hay is committed to South Carolina. I saw this. It was kind of interesting that Ja'Kai Moore has found his landing spot. Ja'Kai Moore will play his 7th year of college football at North Carolina. He'll play for Bill Belichick's girlfriend. Bill Belichick at South Carolina. At North Carolina, rather. So Ja'Kai Moore will play his 7th and, I believe, final year of college football at North Carolina. He is signed with the Tar Heels. You know, Moore, 6 years, started, about 28 games at South Carolina, played all over the offensive line. Let's see, ready? 13 games at left tackle, 7 games at left guard, 4 at right guard, 4 at right tackle. There was some injury stuff with Moore at times. He just got passed up. There's a level of talent in the room, from the perspective of the coaching staff, as Moore got passed. If you're Ja'Kai Moore, I get it. You got one last go around. Go find some place where you have more opportunity. So Ja'Kai Moore will go up north just a little bit to Chapel Hill and play his final year, seventh year of college football for the North Carolina Tar Heels. Very interesting story coming out of Arkansas real quick. Nico's little brother, Madden. And you heard this kind of was a secondary story to Nico leaving Tennessee and going to UCLA. His brother, who had committed to Tennessee, flipped and went to Arkansas, decided he now wants to go to UCLA and hang with his brother. That's all well and good. You can do whatever you want in the wild, wild west of college football. You can make that move. Well, here's the thing. Arkansas's collective, Arkansas Edge, said, all right, man, you're leaving. That's one thing, but now we want some of our money back. We want some of our NIL dough back. So we'll see where it ends up because, look, these contracts aren't like, coaches' contracts. Remember, these players aren't employees. But these NIL deals through collectives, there are setups in these deals that if you leave or whatever the case, you have to give money back if you never play. Or let's say, however the deal is constructed, if you're not fulfilling the life of the deal, we want some of the money back to compensate for the fact you're not fulfilling your entire commitment in the deal. So Nico's little brother Madden decided to go back to UCLA. Now Arkansas Edge, the collective, they want X amount of money back that they've given you. You're not going to play it down at Arkansas. Well, we kind of paid you with the idea you were going to play here, so we want X amount of dollars back. If this thing ends up in court, it will be interesting, or a settlement, because this might stop some players from transferring if they got to get money back. Right? They might stay if they know that. Oh man, I got to flip some cash back from a buyout, so to speak. So we'll see where this goes. This is a very interesting story. Where could it end up and where could it go? Because in this crazy world of college athletics right now where the rules are, there are no rules, then maybe this is not a rule, but this might change some attitudes about when you leave and when you don't leave. You might go, well, if I do leave, per my NIL agreement, I got to pay this much money back. So you know what? Maybe I like it here. Maybe it's pretty cool. My bank account likes it here. Or unless you're going to go somewhere else and they're going to give you so much money, you can pay off your buyout and still make more money than you're making at the spot you're in. Your head hurt? Yeah, mine does. This whole thing, man. I need ibuprofen. Or I'll just go to my office and get that Jack Daniels I've hidden, the Tennessee honey. I just made that up. I would never do that. It's just a joke. This isn't radio in the 90s. Just have booze sitting around in our offices. Anyway, this stuff is very complex and complicated, obviously, but this could be something that makes people think. And look, a lot of us say this. I'm for player movement. I got no problem with players being able to leave and go play in other places. I thought some of those old transfer rules were stupid and ridiculous. I want to transfer. And the coach goes, good, I'll tell you where you can transfer. Seriously? You go, what? But that's the world we live in. I thought that was stupid, but I think right now the way it is needs to be fixed. Can we meet right in the middle? Can we get in the middle of this thing? Where it's not where the coaches could tell you where you could transfer, where you could play, and the players just can't get up and leave anytime they feel like it for whatever reason and go do whatever. There's got to be, again, some kind of process and rules in place that make this make sense. And you know how you have to do that. Say it with me. Collectively bargain. So this is going to be an interesting story to follow if this type of thing interests you, is how does this play out? Does Arkansas get X amount of dollars back? Everything they're asking for, they get nothing. So we shall see. But that's the story right now of Madden, Nico's little brother, who going back to UCLA and leaving Arkansas where he never played it down. But he got money. So we talk a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the Game. I'm going to play a cut real quick. Cut 6, Ed. Sorry to throw you there. Eli Drinkwitz was on 670 The Score in Chicago. And Steve Smith from the NFL Network, former Carolina Panther, Baltimore Raven wide receiver, criticized Luther Burden, or had criticism about Luther Burden, the wide receiver from Missouri. Here's what Eli Drinkwitz said about Steve Smith. Hit it.
Who? Who did that?
Steve Smith, former wide receiver, NFL wide receiver.
He's got his own issues to worry about. I'm not worried about somebody else's opinion about Luther Burden's tape. The Chicago Bears liked the tape enough and believed in it. He's an all-conference player, all-American player. Everybody's got haters and critics, so, I mean, I don't really care.
I like the little shot that Drinkwitz with Steve Smith. He's got his own issues. And you know Steve Smith's issues, and if you don't, it's really easy. Just Google Steve Smith, and you will find the issues that Steve Smith, former wide receiver of the Panthers and Ravens, had recently involving another man's wife. But the thing about Luther Burden is, again, he wasn't as good last year as he was 2 years ago when Burden was phenomenal. I mean, there's some things with Burden with the route tree and route running and things of that nature and some other things that get more consistent. Sure, Burden, though, is a yards after catch monster. And I think last year part of the problem was that Missouri offense, just the whole offense wasn't as good as it was the year before. It wasn't just Burden. So I think Luther Burden can be a good NFL wide receiver if you use him correctly. You put him in the slot, and again, Burden improves the things he has to improve. Luther Burden could be really good. But I just love Drinkwitz. Steve Smith, he's got his own issues to deal with right now. I don't think he needs to worry about Luther Burden's tape. Scott Hamilton from the Post and Courier. We're going to yip with him next about football and other things in the world of Scott Hamilton, columnist from the Post and Courier. That's coming up here on the Halftime Show. We talk a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford, Ed Bird here on the game. All right, if you had some kind of medical issue that was like worrying or bothering you, or you wanted to get something done with it, would you just text somebody to send you something? Would you? Of course not. Man, I feel like I have chest pain. I ought to text somebody to send me something. No. You would go to a doctor who is an expert in the field, and then he would give you help that is personalized to your problem, specifically to you. Well, that's what they do at the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. If you're a guy and things aren't the way they used to be, whether it's sleep, energy, exercise, life drive, memory, sleeping, you could have low testosterone issues. If you do, you go to the Men's Clinic, you see them. They will see if it's low T, and if it is, they will put you on a personalized program to make you feel better. 803-875-MENS. Make the call. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Ed Bird, hanging out. Once Tyler found out Scott Hamilton was on today, Tyler was like, I'm sick. I can't come in. Scott really weirds out Tyler. Never know what he's going to say. Tyler's always near the dump button. He's nervous. So Tyler all of a sudden got sick. I'm going to call it the Hamilton flu. What's up, bub?
The Hamilton flu. Penicillin ain't going to fix that, baby.
Hey, man, real quick, and I know you have spent a good amount of time in North Carolina. Obviously, our buddy Scott Hamilton, columnist from the Post and Courier, here with us on the halftime show. And you spent a lot of time around the Triangle, and you know it really well, and you know people there, and I know you probably talk to people. What the hell is going on with Bill Belichick and his girlfriend? Give me a little insight.
I think we need to call social services and have a wellness check because there's some kind of elder abuse going on. I mean, you saw the
weird.
It is weird. It's uncomfortable. It's like he's a different dude. And look, we've all heard about midlife crises and maybe have experienced some form of a midlife crisis, but he's not in midlife, dude. He's elderly, but he's also not going out and buying Corvettes and wearing gold chains and going out with a younger girl. I mean, this is something extreme, dude. I mean, this is weird, Terry. You named it. It's just weird. And of all the people in the world, who would you expect to act like this? It wouldn't have been Bill Belichick, would it?
He wouldn't even be on the list, right? The ultimate control freak seems like he's being controlled. And look, the more I lost track, Scott, of how many people I know made this joke about this whole thing. Hey, Bill, blink twice if you need help. Right? That's what it feels like almost. She's got some kind of voodoo curse, or she's like, hypnotized him or something. Or remember, what was it, Lord of the Rings, where the guy was under that spell, the king?
I've actually never seen those, but I get it.
I've now lost a lot of respect for you. Anyway, our buddy Scott Hamilton, Post and Courier, hanging with us on the halftime show. Because I was thinking about this for a bit, because none of it makes any sense, right? And I thought, and I'll be, Dr. Terry Ford, psychologist. Bill Belichick, probably very rigid life, correct? His dad was a coach. Bill was driven from like an early age to be, a coach and be rigid and just, laser focused and blinders on, right? And for whatever reason, he's never gone. I'm guessing Bill Belichick never went out with the wild, crazy girls when he was in high school or college. Would you agree with me?
I would agree 100%.
Now, Bill was married for a long time. He had a family, had kids. He had that girlfriend for a bit. She was younger, but not like this. I thought there for a bit is this Bill, because Bill's never done anything like this, is Bill like, I'm in my 70s, I got a ton of money, I'm going to go crazy and act like I'm 19. That's what I thought for a while, but now I'm like you. This is starting to become a little, like, disturbing and weird.
I say wellness check half joking, because it is off script. It's out of personality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extreme. I mean, this is extreme behavior for anybody, but especially for somebody who has never diverted from a way of acting. I mean, dude, on to Cincinnati. I mean, that's all
right.
we did,
Hey, Scott, to your point, this guy was known for his blandness, right?
He's almost like an older version, if Dion were to be a swinger, like if Coach Prime were a swinger. That's what we're getting now.
It's crazy.
And I want to know this, and I would give anything to be able to get this information, but nobody will ever know. What does Saban think about it? His twin.
I wonder what his
Miss Terry?
boy's thinking.
What's Miss Terry saying about it?
I know. I mean, don't you think they're sitting around when no one's looking and going, "What the heck is going on with the hoodie?"
Or maybe, and let's just go on down this rabbit hole. Maybe Robert Kraft, can now feel a little better about himself and the massage parlor and all that down in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some people in the conspiracy theory wackadoodle world that are trying to connect the dots to Kraft and some of those goings on and what's going on with Bill. There's a lot of wacky stuff out there, man. I'm just telling you. There's a lot of stuff.
Belichick's going to come out as being on Epstein's island, and now he's just letting loose because he knows he's about to be busted and going to freak offs of P. Diddy.
I tell you, this thing is just that could be next. The P. Diddy film with Belichick. I mean, who knows?
He's going to be a character witness.
Wow, this thing is just so insane. Scott Hamilton, our buddy from columnist from the Post and Courier. Yeah, I admitted this on the air today, and I'm not going to lie to you, man. It just hit me earlier this morning that the Kentucky Derby is tomorrow. Because my world is so much of college football and the NFL and, stuff going on with basketball, with the NBA or college of men's and women's. And of course, I'm a baseball nerd. Scott, it hit me this morning. I said, oh, my God, the Kentucky Derby's tomorrow. I used to be all over these Triple Crown races. I had to sit there for a minute and go, what has happened to me?
Yeah. I mean, and I blame horse racing. It's been 10 years since the Triple Crown of, and I can't even think of the name right now. But what was it, Pegasus or something? The one that won the Triple Crown last.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Here's what's said. Now, to your point right now, I can sit here and talk about Affirmed and Aladar. I can talk about Seattle Slew. I can talk about Secretariat. I can go back to that when we were younger, when horse racing mattered, and tell you all those horses. Right now, off the top of my head, I cannot tell you the horse that won the Triple Crown recently to break the streak. I can't tell you.
Pharaoh in 2015. I was trying to think because I kept misspelling Pharaoh when I was writing about it. And my lead to my column that day, I covered the Derby that day. My lead to the column at the end of that season was that a racehorse, a unicorn, because the Triple Crown was so rare.
Mm-hmm.
But and I talked to some experts and I said, listen, how big of a moment is this? And they were expecting it to be the moment that really flipped horse racing back into the consciousness of the American people, because once upon a time, and I'm going way back, but, it was golf, it was baseball, it was horse racing, college football. Then it just kind of slipped out of the mainstream, and then people only paid attention 3 days a year, sometimes only 1 day a year, that being tomorrow, the Kentucky Derby. But they didn't leverage it. And I think the pandemic hurt a little bit, because the Derby got moved from May to the fall and all that. But they haven't done what they need to do, they being the powers that be in horse racing, to make it an accessible sport. I know it's on TV and so forth, but still, we don't get a lot of information about it. I mean, unless you're a degenerate gambler. But we don't get stories every day, every week about horses that are running in, Aqueduct or somewhere like that. Mm-hmm. And I blame the sport. They haven't done anything. And with the decline of daily newspapers, you don't really see beat writers for it anymore. It's just sad, man. It's sad. That horse racing and boxing, dude, they're tethered together. They really are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Scott Hamilton with us from the Post and Courier, talking some sports here on the halftime show in the game. And I think what happened when the Triple Crown was finally won roughly 10 years ago, instead of helping the sport, now the one thing that kept people coming back to it, they're like, okay, you got Triple Crown winner, I'm done with that. Wake me up when it's important again. That feels like what happened.
Yeah, well, you know what would be good for it? NIL. Because it saved college basketball, because they had guys coming back. We don't have the same horses.
No.
We can't build a relationship with a horse.
No, you can't. So
if they had NIL,
I come back.
And then we got the portal. Well, this is going to be, this one's going to be a longer race horse. We're going to transfer this one over to the shorter track.
The horse transfer portal. Oh my God!
But that's the thing, though. You can't build a relationship with a horse. You don't. We know the jockeys to a certain degree. We know owners to a certain degree, Bob Baffert and those guys. But but the horses are the athletes, and we can't form a relationship with them. And I'll go back to my argument, and I was kidding, but I'm not kidding, that that NIL is the best thing to happen to college basketball in the last 30 years.
It's kept players around. You can actually see the same player for X amount of years if he stays with your school. No, you're not wrong there.
And think about this. There's a plurality to it, Terry, because we might see some of these basketball players playing other sports, I don't want to name any names, but it might be happening in the upstate this fall.
Absolutely. All right, man. Before I let you roll, I saw you post up a couple columns up at Post and Courier. What do you got that people could read?
I got a real cool boxing event happening down here tonight. It's a charity event, but it's people who've been training for months and they're taking it very serious. And I profiled a professor of Jewish studies, a woman, a 41-year-old mother of two at the College of Charleston. She is fighting tonight for the first time. And then on Sunday, I got a column about Don Staley's statue. Nice to see you prowling like a puma around the site that day. And then on Monday, we've got a column breaking down what it means for Brad Brownell's contract extension. What does that mean? What's the message it sends?
Hey, real quick, I only got a couple seconds. How about the clause in that contract that by April 15th, he can walk up to the powers that be at Clemson and say, I don't want to be the basketball coach anymore, but I want to be the administrative assistant to the AD, and you got to pay me $250,000 a year.
We've already seen it. Dave Clawson worked that deal back in the fall when he was football coach at Wake Forest and stepped in. And I think it's something we're going to see more of. Guys are landing at places, and they want it to be their homes because they know how unstable college athletics are.
And if you get tired of coaching in the NIL transfer portal world, you got a nice little golden parachute, so to speak.
Exactly. You got something to look forward to.
Scott Hamilton, Post and Courier, at Scott Hamilton PC. You can check him out on Twitter. It's always good hanging out with you, bud. We'll do it again next Friday, my friend.
You're the man, Terry. Bet on journalism.
You got it. See ya. All right, we talk a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors, like always. So we don't have, obviously, any kind of salary cap in college sports. So how much would a big market-type school spend on their football roster? Let's get into that next. And what does it mean? Halftime show, Yapping Football to the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors on the Game. Talk a ton of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the Game. Terry Ford, Ed Bird's hanging around with us, steering the ship. Dave's got a day off. Tyler, of course, did the mornings, which he will do again on Monday, and then be back with us on Tuesday. Dave will be back on Monday, maybe. We never know where Dave could be. So, Ed, you might be back. Who knows? One day, Dave could just disappear. Never hear from him again. Whatever happened to Dave? We don't know. And 10 years later, you see him on TV. You're like, wow, he's a brain surgeon. What the heck did that happen? Anyway, all right, so we talk a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. All right, college football, the rosters and the roster budgets will just keep going up and up because, again, there is no salary cap, no salary floor. I mean, you're going to have this rev share, but you can also go around the rev share. You can get more money through collectives and everything else. Yeah, those deals, at least temporarily, will be in some kind of clearinghouse or whatever the case. But, you know, there's no line of how much you can pay. You can pay up, you know, again, if you look at the rev share model, it's really $18.5 million. Some teams can't afford to pay that much. Some programs, rather. Some programs, $18.5 million, they got that. They got that in the glove compartment. Texas, according to Houston Chronicle columnist Kurt Bowles, Texas will spend between $35 and $40 million on their football roster. That's what Bowles reported earlier this week. Somewhere between $35 and $40 million. Think about it. Ohio State, remember last year, was like $20 million, if you remember correctly. We always said, that roster is about a $20 million roster. And look, there's no, we don't have in front of us, like you can't just go crack open the internet and find who's getting what money at the University of Texas. But that's the word, 35 to 40 million. So I thought about this, and look, there's obviously a correlation to the schools that make the most money to the schools winning national championships. In college football, there is no Cinderella champion. You really, the closest thing you had to a Cinderella playing for the championship was when TCU took on Georgia a couple years ago, and we saw how that ended up. Didn't end well, obviously, for Texas Christian. But that's the closest we've had to a Cinderella playing for the championship. But that's a Big 12 team out of a power conference. But you don't have, those cute little stories like, Butler in basketball or VCU getting to the Final Four or things of that nature. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't. So the bigger the budget, the more money you're making, the better chance you have of winning a national championship. Example, and again, you're not going to be stunned. Looking at national champions. This past year, Ohio State. Year before, Michigan. Georgia went back-to-back. Alabama, LSU, Clemson. Alabama, Clemson. Alabama, Ohio State. Florida State, 2013. Alabama, Alabama. Then you look at the schools with the highest valuation of worth and the revenue that is brought in. Ohio State, Texas, Texas A&M, Michigan, Alabama, Notre Dame, Georgia, Nebraska, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Penn State, Southern Cal, LSU, Florida, Wisconsin, Clemson, Oregon, Arkansas, Kentucky, Auburn. That's your top 20. They're all winning national championships. Florida State, sitting at 24, is probably the lowest on this list. That's won a championship in the last, 15 years, roughly? You say TCU, Tara, they play for that national championship. They're 39th. Tara, what about South Carolina? They are 30th in valuation and probably close to 25th in revenue. So again, and you look at this. This is from CNBC. South Carolina, $160 million in revenue generated, compared to Texas A&M, a huge underachiever, $279 million generated. Texas, $271 million generated. Ohio State, $280 million generated. Tennessee's over $200 million as well. So there are 9 schools making over $200 million in revenue that I'm looking at right now. Nope, there's 10 because there's LSU. So you have ready LSU, Southern Cal, Penn State, Tennessee, Nebraska, Georgia, Notre Dame, Alabama, Michigan, A&M, Texas, Ohio State, all over $200 million in revenue. That's roughly, 12? Probably 12 or 13. So your thought is then, what the heck is wrong with Nebraska? They can't even get to a bowl game until this past year, and you're generating over $200 million in revenue. What kind of an underachiever are you? But the biggest underachiever is Texas A&M. Despite the fact they're making almost $280 million in revenue, they can't win more than 8 games usually. And they haven't, maybe very rarely sniffed even an opportunity to play in a big game in their history. It's crazy when you look at this. But the teams that are winning are teams that are generating the most revenue, and the valuation of the program is at its highest. Just where it's at. It's like baseball. Tyler and I had this talk. We've had this talk on and off over the last year and a half. Jay and I had this talk on the show. It's just like baseball. There's no salary cap, no salary floor. And the teams that have the most money, if they're not run by a bunch of knuckleheads, typically those teams can be consistently successful because they've got the most money to spend. And even if they do make a mistake, they can outspend the mistake. I mean, in baseball, you see the teams win the World Series. We've talked about this stat over and over again. Only one team whose revenue is 20th or below in Major League Baseball since the turn of the century that has won a World Series is the Marlins. And when they beat the Yankees, what was it, 2003? That's it. Everybody else, you got to be above 20. So if you're a lower market team in revenue, can you have winning records? Sure. Can you make the playoffs? Yep. Can you even get to a World Series? Sure. Are you going to win the World Series? Probably not. Because eventually on your road through the postseason, the fact that you don't have the money to spend on talent like the other team does is going to bite you in the behind. Just is. And that's college football as well, and even college basketball. But college football more so. Again, you don't have Cinderellas in college football like you do college basketball, even though a Cinderella hasn't won the NCAA tournament. These things happen because eventually the teams, the bigger crew is going to get you at some point. And we circle back to this college football thing. Texas with a roster of 35, 40 million. Look, Steve Sarkisian's made 2 straight college football playoffs, right? So you figured Sark is in a good spot. He's bought himself a ton of time. When you're dropping 35, 40 million on a roster, you better make the college football playoff. There's no doubt. So, I mean, does South Carolina make more than a lot of schools? Sure. Absolutely. If you look at the SEC, revenue generating wise, South Carolina again sitting at $160 million according to this report from CNBC. I mean, there are a bunch of teams in the SEC who do make more. It's the reality of the business. Auburn, Kentucky, Arkansas. I'm just moving up here. Be patient with me. Florida, LSU. Keep going. Hang in there. Oklahoma, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, A&M, Texas. So you're in the bottom part of the league, even though you're in the top 25, roughly around 25th in revenue. See where you're sitting in the SEC. Is it doable? Sure, but, again, you're not making as much as a bunch of them. That's the world you're in. And that's the world you're fighting for and playing in right now. And it's a surprise to no one. It really isn't, but you just saw it right in front of you this week when you say Texas is spending 35 or 40 million on their roster. There you go. We'll talk a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We got baseball tonight, 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock first pitch. South Carolina hosting the Florida Gators over at Founders. Again, you can hear it right here at 107.5 The Game in Columbia and our affiliate in Myrtle Beach at 100.3 The Game. Firehouse sub text the hour at 803-404-6100 next here on the halftime show on The Game. All right, coming up here, just a little bit, we'll give away some tickets, too. We'll be giving away tickets for the South Carolina-Florida series. We'll be giving away a pair of tickets and also a family 4-pack as well. That's coming up in 2 o'clock hours, so get set for that. Dad, don't let me forget that, because I'll forget, and then Josh will get all upset, and he'll cry, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It just is. You hate to see a grown Josh cry. It's awful. He starts, and then the snot thing gets going, and it's just uncomfortable. So remind me. It is. Just remind me to give away these tickets. All right. Firehouse Sub text the hour 803-404-6100. Appreciate you always filling on the text line. Oh, where's it at here? Talking about the Bill Belichick thing. It's like, anybody ever thought that he just really, they really dig each other? Well, first of all, God, would that be boring? And it would give us nothing to talk about. 2, look, could that be just as simple as that? Yeah, it could be. But we're just trying to be honest. And I'll say it this way. The odds of a 24-year-old woman or 25 or whatever she is just digging some guy in his 70s on the surface of just that is hard to go with the odds of it. I mean, what do you talk about? She's doing TikTok and you've got an 8-track tape player. You're talking about TV shows. You're sitting there like saying stuff to her like, I tell you, I love Gilligan's Island. She's like, what's TV? What's a TV? What's a network? I don't know. It's just a tough deal. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just tough. And look, again, not trying to be downer guy, but I mean, if Bill Belichick, you know, let's say he worked at the Waffle House and he wasn't the greatest NFL head coach ever, would she still have the same interest in him? I'm going to go with no. Just throwing it out there. So, look, texter, no. Could it be as simple as they just dig each other? Sure. The odds against it, it feels like in this world they are. But you could be right, and everybody else who's talking about it could be massively wrong. And if you're right, God, how boring is that, Ed Bird? Oh, man. That'd be the test, right? If Belichick just went to her for fun and said, I lost everything. I'm broke. And I just got fired. How would she handle that? I'm with you all the way, Billy. Probably calls him Billy. I'm with you all the way, Billy. We'll be poor. It's okay. I just want to be with you. I love your hoodie. I don't know. Good text, though. We've had some excellent texts. We've been on a run of those for a while now, so thank you at 803-404-6100 here on the Halftime Show. As we talk a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. One thing I want to hit real quick in the world of college football and then maybe NFL, if I got a minute. We were talking about the business of the game and the sport. Something else has happened that I think is interesting. The University of Kentucky is looking to make their athletic department an LLC, a limited liability company. That would allow Kentucky to create a public-private partnership and raise funds and handle expenses of, the collegiate sports that they have to deal with. Because obviously, if the House settlement ever is approved and you go to a rev share, schools obviously have to pay $18.5 million. Really, $22 million is what the rev share is when you add in scholarships. So everybody's looking for an angle. University of Kentucky is looking to becoming an LLC when they can then start partnering up with public and private entities to help pay for the cost of paying student athletes. So that's just another angle, which would be a very interesting angle if they could pull this thing off. The quote, we believe in this innovative approach, a new structure and governance model that thoughtfully contemplates how we strengthen athletics, protect and promote the university, and open up new opportunities for growth. Basically, that means money. That means we need to make more money. And, that's just another way to do it. Look, the one thing about all this that I don't want to see happen, and we talked about this from the beginning of all this stuff that's going on, is you don't want to see non-revenue generating sports get kicked to the curb, like Olympic sports. Because all those athletes, we joke about some sports, and all those athletes are working just as hard as college football players and college basketball players. Somebody doing crew, they're out there on the water at 5:30 in the morning rowing a boat, and, they're working hard, they're sweating, they're sacrificing just like everybody else. So I just don't want to see those sports go away because, again, they don't generate revenue. They cost money. And these universities are a business. And they don't want to run sports that are going to cost them money. What's trending at 2 is next here on the Halftime Show as we get you ready for Florida and Carolina baseball later this evening here on the Game. Halftime show, what's trending at 2? Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Terry Ford hanging out with you. Ed Bird's here as we roll this baby till 3 and then hand it off to the postgame show here on the game. All right, South Carolina and Florida will go at it starting tonight, 6:45 at Founders. No Ethan Petrie for the Gamecocks. Will there be a Nathan Hall? Hall is also injured. Here's Paul Maneri with his talking about Nathan Hall and his kind of his limited ability to run right now. Cut 4, Ed.
Yeah, that's all that's holding him up. He can't run.
Yeah.
His heel, he's got a heel Achilles issue. So I was going to put him in to hit and just told him, look, I don't care if you walk to first base or just a little slow jog, whatever, but do not try to beat out an infield hit. I don't want a setback, you know. But what happened was when Scobie walked, now it was a double play situation. If there was 2 outs, I would have hit him because I didn't want him to have, I didn't want him hitting into a double play. So I let Woyd hit. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He struck out and left the bases. We ended up leaving the bases loaded. But had Scobie made an out and it was still first and second or whatever, and there was 2 outs, I would have had Nathan hit there because he can hit fine. The outfit hitting now? Yeah. That's him in the batting cage. He can hit fine. He just can't run. So when there's 2 outs, other than trying to beat out an infield single, he could have just walked to first base, and then I would have put a pinch runner in right for him right away if he'd have gotten a hit. But it didn't end up working out that way. Fortunately, we ended up winning the game.
So that's the thing with Nathan Hall. It should be like when we were kids, Ed, and you played, and you would have somebody run for you. You'd hit it, and they'd run. They frown upon that in real baseball. But Nathan Hall he can't run. So we'll see if Hall plays this weekend. No Ethan Petrie. In case you missed it, let's reread a couple of cuts from earlier, Ed. Let's get this is cut 1. Paul Maneri giving you an injury update on Ethan Petrie, and also you just heard one on Nathan Hall, but he also says a little bit about Nathan Hall. But here is Paul Maneri with an injury update.
Ethan is out for the weekend, obviously, and I still don't even know about Nathan. His heel did not respond well the first couple days of this week, and I haven't seen him yet today. Talked to him on the phone, but he literally was just getting out of bed, so he didn't really know how it feels. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that he'll be ready to go for tomorrow.
10 games. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah. So the bottom line is you play with the guys that are available, and we've had. I never like to talk about injuries and make excuses or anything like that, but we've had some pretty important injuries to us this year that who knows how much of a difference it'd make if Eli Jersenbeck had stayed healthy and Talmadge had stayed healthy and Rocky was at full strength, and you just never know. But it is what it is. You play with the guys that are available to you, and you do the very best that you can. But I just wish I had better news on Petrie, and wish I knew for sure that I could tell you Hall was going to play.
Oh, there you go. No Ethan Petrie. Don't know for sure about Nathan Hall. We heard, obviously, Paul Maneri talking about Hall and that whole heel issue. We'll get one more, Ed. This is Paul Maneri, cut 5, kind of giving you his scouting report of the Florida Gators who are coming to town starting tonight.
Yeah, they're a typical Florida team. They hit a lot of home runs. They got good athletes. They got good arms on the mound. It's kind of befuddles me why they struggled and like they did, to be honest with you, because it's certainly not a lack of talent. And I think their pitching numbers aren't good, but they've been pitching a lot better. And I think they found a closer in Clemente. Their number 1 guy, Peterson's he's one of the top pitchers in the league. Aiden King has given them a real lift. I think he went there as a non-scholarship player and walk-on, and he's developed into a nice starting pitcher for them. So, yeah, listen, I've coached against Florida for a lot of years, and it's never easy, and it never will be easy. They get the pick of the litter and maybe the most fertile baseball state in the country, so they ought to be really good every year. And Kevin, he's had some years where they haven't started great, and yet they finish strong, which I admire about him, So it'd be good to see Kevin. I haven't talked to him in a few years, so.
Yeah, I mean, look, Florida struggled early. Like we said, they lost their first 8 SEC games. They got swept by Tennessee, swept by Georgia, lost the first 2 to Ole Miss, then finally won the third game of that series. So they were behind the 8 ball. Now they are 8-13 in the league, and they need 5 wins to get to the magic 13. They got 9 games left. So they figure if they go 5-4, they're in. But after South Carolina, they play 2 ranked squads. They play Texas, the best team in the SEC, and then they play Alabama, who is above 500 in league play and is ranked. So it's not easy for Florida, but they have a way. If they go 5-4, they're going to get to 13 wins in conference, which should get them back in the dance. South Carolina can only lose 1 more game the rest of the year in the SEC. That's it. That's the end of the wiggle room to get to 13. So it starts tonight, 6:45. And with Florida, really quick, you look at some of the players that keep your eyes and ears on. Colby Shelton's had just a phenomenal year, 377 batting average, slugs over 600, on base. Bobby Bowser hitting a 330 with 14 home runs that leads the team. His OPS is over 1,000. So that's what you got. They got 4 players in double digits in home runs. They've only got 1 player double digits in steals, and that's Bowser. Or Bowser. Also, a guy that's hit 14 homers. So, I mean, pitching-wise, Florida struggled. Liam Peterson, Aiden King, their 2 best starters. King has also spent time coming out of the pen, but Peterson's been starting all year. And those are probably going to be the 2 guys you'll see Friday and Saturday, is my guess, for Florida. So they've gotten it going. They're playing much better, and they're trying to angle themselves into a NCAA tournament berth. So again, 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock first pitch with Derek and Stewart here on the Game in Columbia, and also our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. Speaking of that, let's give away some tickets, Ed Bird. All right. Caller number 5 gets a family 4-pack. A caller number 5, 803-404-6100. Let's give you the exact spiel on this. A family 4-pack for tomorrow's game against the Gators. Caller number 5, 803-404-6100, family 4-pack of tickets to go see the Gators. Caller number 5, that's tomorrow at Founders, a 4 o'clock first pitch, 3:45. We get underway with our pregame. So you can give away Bird a ring, and he'll get that taken care of for you. Switching off to Gamecock football. It's official. Nolan Hay, the offensive lineman from Incarnate Word, has committed to South Carolina. Hay last year, a Pro Football Focus blocking grade of 80.6, which is really good. Now, again, you got to step up to the SEC. We get it. Torricelli Simpkins held his own pretty well, moving up a long way to the SEC. And that was a longer jump than what Nolan Hay has. There's no guarantee what Hay can bring you. Most likely going to play guard, center. There's help there at both guard positions because those competitions are open. But Hay, if nothing else, will add depth. So Nolan Hay has committed to South Carolina. Oklahoma State, Washington State, and Colorado were sniffing around Hay, and South Carolina beat those folks out. Also, Ja'Kai Moore, who hit the portal, will play football this upcoming season at North Carolina. 7th year for Ja'Kai Moore. He will be playing his college football again at North Carolina. Moore, we looked at it earlier, started 28 games, I believe, over all these years at South Carolina. But he got passed in the pecking order in the offensive line room. So Ja'Kai Moore wants to play his final go around. And he wants to go somewhere where he has a better chance to play. And he lands at North Carolina with Bill Belichick, or really I should say Bill Belichick's girlfriend, which feels like the person who's really running the program at North Carolina. So that's where Ja'Kai Moore will land. We're trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions here on the Game. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging around with us as we go till 3 o'clock. I brought this up, but I was being honest. Earlier today, I realized that Kentucky Derby's tomorrow, and I went, oh, my God. I totally forgot. And, you know, I grew up in an area that was big in horse racing. has won the Jewels of the Triple Crown. Then there used to be Kentucky Derby watching parties, Preakness watching parties, Belmont watching parties. People were really into it. I've told stories here about when I used to go to the Preakness when I was a young Terry Ford. We talk about the wonderful traditions like the running of the urinals. Go to YouTube. But I just didn't think about the Kentucky Derby tomorrow. Right now, horse racing has left my mind because it's left the mind of the public. It's still a popular sport to some. It's a niche sport. And it wasn't in my brain. It just wasn't. Journalism is looked at as a favorite. Just kind of look at the rundowns earlier today. Journalism's a favorite. Burnham Square is another horse getting a lot of love. Bob Baffert has multiple horses in the race. His first time back in 3 years. Remember, Baffert got suspended because of some of the things that were going on in his camp regarding other horses. The horse, though, as I was reading about this, that I'm really rooting for, Chunk of Gold. He was purchased for only $2,500. Finished second at the Louisiana Derby, and his trainer is only 32 years old, a dude named Ethan West. I am rooting for Chunk of Gold. No offense to journalism. I don't know much about the horse. I just know it's the favorite. And according to the experts, and I'll read you the quote, journalism, best horse in terms of pedigree, speed, and distance. But again, the best horse doesn't always win the Derby. The favorite doesn't always win the Derby. Again, I'd love to see Chunk of Gold, quote unquote, shock the world and win the Derby. That would be awesome. So the Kentucky Derby again is tomorrow. Much to my shock, and I'm going, wow, what has happened to me? Hey, if you watch football at Williams-Brice Stadium, now's your chance to play golf inside. Upper Deck Golf coming to Columbia May 9th and 10th. For your chance to win a VIP 4-pack, all you need to do is go to our Facebook page, the 1075 The Game Facebook page. Upload a picture of yourself at a game inside Willie B. We'll notify our winners as of Tuesday, May the 6th. Again, go to our Facebook page. Put up a picture of yourself inside Willie B. You could be playing golf inside Williams-Brice Stadium. We'll have some more tickets to give away here real soon. We'll have another pair to give away. You make sure you send that to Dreamy Josh, Ed, so he doesn't cry uncontrollably. It's just embarrassing. We'll have another pair of tickets to give away for the Saturday game for South Carolina and Florida. That's coming up between now and 3 o'clock. We continue on with what's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Our buddy John Whittle, who covers Carolina baseball for the Big Spur. We'll talk to John next here on The Game. All right, what's trending at 2? Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. What's trending at 2 is John Whittle. He's trending. How many times have you been heard that in your life? You're trending, John Whittle.
Well, you said it 3 times here in the last 15 seconds. I'm going to go with 3 times.
Everybody, John Whittle for the Big Spur. Hey, always good having you on, my friend.
It's always great to be on. I appreciate you having me.
All right, so we're obviously winding down to the end of what has been a massively disappointing baseball season, obviously. John, I mean, when you think about this, and you cover it like nobody else, when you're looking at this season, what's the number one thing that just keeps coming back in your head?
The first word that just keeps coming to mind is just how much of a disaster this season's been. And the thing I keep going back to is just the thing that just doesn't leave me is how much basically everybody on the roster who's returned from last year is taking a step back in their development and in their play. And, I just those are that's what really sticks with me most. Like there's been no improvement from last year to this year among players. There's been little improvement within the year for basically any guy. And that's I posted a tweet about a month ago now that, I just feel bad for the players. And that's kind of the crux of it is, you come to a place to get better and improve yourself, and it just hadn't happened.
I mean, and maybe there's not an answer to this, or maybe you don't have the answer to this, but why? Is it just different techniques being taught by a new coaching staff? It just didn't mesh. Could it just be a combination of a bunch of different stuff? But to your point, it's a great point. Why didn't they get better?
Yeah, and when you're as bad as this South Carolina team has been this year, it's got to be a whole lot of different things. I mean, it's not ever just one thing when you take the kind of step back that this team and this program has. So I don't know. It's certainly there's certainly a disconnect on the players and coaches. I don't think that there's any debate in that. I don't think that this team was talented enough to compete for championships or anything like that. Like when coming into the season, I thought they'd finish probably 10, 11, 12 in the league, something like that. My expectations weren't crazy high. I thought they'd be below 500 in the league, probably I think 13 or 14 wins. But they're at the bottom of the conference, or with the exception of Missouri. At the bottom of the conference in basically everything. And, that's not what this team is.
John Whittle hanging out with us from the Big Spur, talking some Gamecock baseball in the halftime show in the game. A lot of people, when Paul Mainieri said here recently, and he's kind of hinted toward, but really said he underestimated how good the SEC is now. A lot of people went real sideways with that comment. What was your thoughts when you first heard that from Coach Mainieri?
Well, he said it. There was a gaggle of us about a month and a half ago, kind of near the start of SEC play, outside of the dugout before an SEC series, and he said basically the same thing. I asked him about it, and he said, and he gave a little bit more context and said, back when I was coaching in the league, if you get a pitcher out early in the game and they were kind of off schedule, they'd bring in a freshman and, it'd be too big of a moment for them. And, then you'd really be able to do some damage. And, he said some things like that and then talked about how, back when he was coaching, there wasn't a transfer portal or anything like that. And now teams are bringing in when you get out that starting pitcher, instead of bringing in that freshman, they're bringing in the guy from the transfer portal who's 23 years old and has played at 3 different schools, and so he gave a little bit more context than he did more recently with you guys. But however long ago it was, a month and a half ago, I thought the same thing. I thought earlier in the week, just
how out of touch can you be? I mean, he's a national championship winning coach who is still holding in an emeritus position at LSU and still following the game very closely. How do you not understand that? Do you not know how good the league is? And, I don't know if the league's as good this year as it was last year, to be honest. But not trying to take anything away from the league this year, but I think it was probably a little bit better last year. But it's one of the most out-of-touch comments I've ever heard from any South Carolina coach. It's not the most damaging. I mean, it was the Spurrier 2 to 3 year comment. It's not as damaging as this one, but that's one of the most out-of-touch comments I've ever heard in my life from a South Carolina coach. I've been covering this program for a little while, so I don't know what to say. He said a lot of shocking things all year. He's thrown players under the bus all year. He's had some really poor press conferences and commentary that he's given, and that's right up there with some of the worst.
Hanging out with us, John Whittle from the Big Spur here on the game as we talk Gamecock baseball here on the halftime show. All right, John, let's say you were sitting down with Coach Maneri, you got the door shut, and he looked at you and said, John, what do I have to do to get this thing right in the off season? What would you tell him?
Whew, that might be a better question for
Hey, John, not to interrupt you, but hey, John, when you start with woo, that's never good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's probably a better question for a couple of weeks from now when this thing's a little bit close to the end. I don't want to. I'll be honest with you in some of the things that I say, but I don't want to throw too many grenades over there while the players are still competing and the coaches are still trying to find a few wins. But there's got to be some just fundamental changes over there and some personnel changes. They're just so far off right now. There's so much that needs to change. And you know what? What's so different about this year is compared to last year's, there was much more investment by the university, starting when Paul Maneri took over, not only from a coaching salary standpoint, but, the level of investment in NIL. That this year's team cost about 4 times of what last year's team cost, for example. They took a charter flight to Kentucky for the first time in program history. So they're putting money into places to help with the investment into players, in players and into players, if that makes sense. And it certainly hasn't shown up.
John Whittle from the Big Spur, trending at 2 here on the halftime show. Look at you, man. You're trending.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm happy to finally be trending. It's only taken 41 years of my life.
Hey, man, seriously, we always love having you on, pal. We'll bug you again soon. Thanks a lot, John.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me, Terry.
All right, we'll see you, bud. All right, it's May 2nd, Ed Burt. It's the greatest day in the history of the world. That's next here on the halftime show on the game. Greatest day in the history of the world, May 2nd. Here on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Ed Bird's here hanging out. A lot of Kentucky Derby stuff today. We'll try to hit a couple of them as we go through. My favorite, the 1903 Kentucky Derby. Hal Booker was riding Judge Himes. Never forget that one. One other old school thing, 1939. Get ready, Ed Bird. On this day in 1939, and again, if you're a baseball nut or historian or you followed the game for X amount of time, you have probably heard this in some way, shape, or form. But on this day in 1939, Lou Gehrig of the New York Yankees does not play against the Detroit Tigers at Briggs Stadium. That ended his streak of 2,130 consecutive games played. Here's Gehrig when he did his farewell speech to the folks at Yankee Stadium long time ago. Hit it, Ed.
For the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad rag. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
That was Lou Gehrig in his speech at Yankee Stadium, basically retiring from baseball because of ALS, which we have for decades and decades and decades called Lou Gehrig's disease. So Lou Gehrig taking himself out of the lineup today in 1939, ending his consecutive game streak at 2130. Also, the greatest day in the history of the world, some championships. The Toronto Maple Leafs last night won only their second Stanley Cup playoff series in years. They have been a team talented as all get out, but can't get over the hump. Offensively talented, I should say. This year in 1967, the Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Montreal Canadiens and won the Stanley Cup. Again, we always hear about the Montreal Canadiens because they've won so many championships in the NHL. But the folks in Toronto, they are insane about the Maple Leafs. And they used to be a championship franchise or competing at least for the championship year in and year out. I believe it's the last time the Maple Leafs won the title, 1967, if my memory serves me, which it really doesn't anymore. 1968, the Boston Celtics beat the Lakers 4-2 to win the NBA title. Something the Celtics did a lot in the 60s, beat the Lakers. Number one pick in the NFL draft this day in 1978, some dude named Earl Campbell from the University of Texas. Little teeny Terry Ford watching football. I'll never forget Earl Campbell just running over dudes. What was it? That great game he had on Monday Night Football against Miami. I think he ran for 1 billion yards. Ran for a long touchdown, just, I think it was a 90-yard, 88-yard touchdown run or whatever. I'll never forget the run against the LA Rams. There was a linebacker named Isaiah Robertson. And to this day, Earl Campbell's helmet mark is in his sternum. Earl Campbell was, wow. And he ran the ball so much, he just wore down. But Earl Campbell, in his prime, was devastating. And he was first-round pick 1978 by the Houston Oilers. Remember, the Oilers got close to getting to the Super Bowl. They just couldn't get past the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, Bum Phillips, next year we're going to kick down that door. Well, they never could get it kicked down. But Earl Campbell, first pick overall in the NFL draft this day in 1978. This day in 1999, John Elway announced his retirement from the NFL. The Broncos won back-to-back Super Bowls. And that was it for Elway. And everybody knew pretty much he'd retire if Denver won that second one against Atlanta, which they did. But John Elway retiring from the NFL on this day in 1999. And look, I've said this. I grew up in Baltimore. I was a little kid, and the hate for John Elway was passed down by generations because he basically told the Colts he didn't want to play for him. People in Baltimore took that personal. But again, when you get older and you get a little bit more mature, you understand I wouldn't have wanted to play for that drunk owner either, Bob Irsay. I would have done everything I could not to play in Baltimore. Bob Irsay was a joke of an owner, and he had made a great franchise a joke. So I get it. You try to use your leverage not to play for that guy. But there's a lot of people in the city of Baltimore for a long time couldn't stand John Elway. So he retired this day, 1999. This day in 2002, Mike Cameron hits 4 homers, comes close to a record-setting 5th, leading the Mariners to a 15-4 win over the Chicago White Sox. Cameron and Brett Boone become the first two teammates to hit 2 home runs in the same inning. One other thing about Elway just hit me. If you think for a minute, because remember, Elway quarterbacks and Bronco teams that got killed in the Super Bowl, and they finally got a couple of rings at the end of his career. But those Bronco teams were nowhere near as good as those NFC squads that they got pummeled by, whether it was Washington, San Francisco, New York, whoever. And once you sit back and look at it, Elway basically carried those teams to Super Bowls. I think sometimes we underrate how good John Elway really was. I got people in Baltimore who would smack me in the face for saying that, Ed Bird. All right, moving on real quick, get a few more in. 2010, LeBron James becomes the 10th player in NBA history to win consecutive MVP awards. And this one, I should save that for Jay Phillips. I'll save that one for Jay Phillips. That's a soccer thing. 2015, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Beat Manny Pacquiao for a unanimous decision in their welterweight title fight. Mayweather stays undefeated. And to be honest with you, it was a terrible fight. Pacquiao, I think he had a shoulder injury, so he wasn't 100%. They had ducked and dodged each other for years. Then when they finally fight, that thing was a dog with fleas and ticks. It was awful. And honestly, for me personally, it's one of those things that really turned me off away from boxing. I used to love boxing when I was young. I loved boxing. And I don't know if it was a golden era or not, but I'm sitting there when I was really young watching Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, and Tommy Hearns, Alfredo Benitez, so many great fighters in that welterweight, middleweight area. Alexis Arguello, just Aaron Pryor. I loved boxing back then. Watching Ray Boom Boom Mancini. But then once boxing became so political and dudes, instead of fighting each other, dodged each other and all this, I got sick of it. And the thing that really wiped me out was this whole Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao dance where they wouldn't, one reason or another, they wouldn't fight. And I was just like thinking, back in the day when I was a boy, they'd have fought each other 3 times. And instead, it was a ducking and dodging. And Floyd Mayweather was a great, great defensive fighter. But the way he ducked and dodged opponents so he could keep his undefeated number, the 0, to me, it was a joke on boxing. It just was. Anyway, 2017, Isaiah Thomas scored 53 points, second highest total in Celtic playoff history. Boston beat the Wizards in overtime. Get this, out of all the great Celtic players of all time, from Bob Cousy to Bill Russell to John Havlicek, Paul Pierce, all these great, Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, all these great Celtic players, Isaiah Thomas, second highest playoff total in Celtic history. Crazy. All right, it's the greatest day in the history of the world. I want to play a cut real quick, Ed Bird. Not to throw you off cut 9. We're going to get this in. Okay, we all know, because we talked about it all week, Tyrese Halliburton's dad, I believe John, got in Giannis Antetokounmpo's face after Indiana beat Milwaukee in a playoff series. Halliburton was being guarded one-on-one by Giannis. Halliburton did a crossover, went past Giannis, and scooped in the game-winning layup. And John Halliburton went on the court, was holding up a towel. Giannis said, he was basically talking crap, being disrespectful. Tyrese Halliburton's father apologized. And by the way, John Halliburton, Tyrese's father, has now been banned from games. Pacer games, whether home or road. The team had to do it. I thought the league should have done it to take the team off the hook, but the team did the right thing. At some point, we got to do something about ridiculous fans, asinine fans. And we said this, when you're a dad and your son has this unbelievable moment in his life, and your first thought is to go talk crap to the opponent, what's that kind of saying about you? Tyrese Halliburton, he got up, when he was talking to the media and basically without being mean to his dad, said, what his dad did was wrong, and he's talked to his dad. Well, Tyrese Halliburton's father talked to TMJ4 News and gave his take on this situation with Giannis. Hit it, Ed Bird.
When I turn it might have seemed like I was looking at him, but I really wasn't. I was looking through him. That's how I was in the moment. I know it looked like we were looking, like I was staring him down, but it wasn't like that. It was in the moment as if I was looking right through him. And yes, I had the banner in my hand going, and I was yelling, yay, yay, yay. Giannis never said anything to me. I never said anything to Giannis. There was no back and forth.
But that changed when Giannis went face-to-face with John near his baseline seats a few moments later.
He grabbed my hands, he put his forehead on my forehead, and he said, don't disrespect me. Don't effing disrespect me. Okay? And I said to him, I was not trying to disrespect you, which I wasn't. I'm telling you, I did not do that on purpose. I really did not. And then I said to him, I love you. He said back to me, I love you. We patted chest. He gave us a thumbs up, and he walked away.
Total opposite of everything we saw and heard. Giannis didn't tell us that story. Didn't look like he was going, yay, yay. By the way, who cheers like that? When you're like kid has a big moment, you win a playoff game and you win a playoff series, are you going, yay? 2, I didn't see that part where they said, I love you and I love you back. I missed the kiss too, Ed. I missed the hug and the kiss. I don't know what's going on there with Dad Halliburton, but all righty, man. Nobody's buying your story, brother. All right, anyway, we'll do our handoff with Jay Phillips, sponsored by Little Pigs on Alpine, and our Firehouse Subtext the hour next, 803-404-6100 on the halftime show. Ed Bird, Terry Ford, for a few more minutes on the game. All right, before we get the Firehouse Sub text of the hour, let's give away this last pair of tickets. Let's roll that out. 803-404-6100. Pair of tickets for tomorrow. South Carolina and Florida at Founders. Again, 3:45 pregame, 4 o'clock first pitch here on the game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. You can go. Let's do caller number, what do you think, 142, Ed? Caller number 6. Caller number 6 gets a pair of tickets to go check out South Carolina and Florida over at Founders. All right. Quick text, and then then I got a greatest day in the history of the world I saved for Jay Phillips because he's going to love this one. This is actually a really good one, right up your wheelhouse there, bub. Let me get here. Yeah, where's it at? I gotta get my Firehouse Up text of the hour. No, I don't want that one. This is the one I want. No, I don't want that one either. Where's Tyler? Hey, it's too bad that John Halliburton couldn't do that to Charles Barkley in his prime. That would have been YouTube gold. Yes, we said this the other day. We were talking about it, Jay, Tyler, and I knew Elijah probably said the same thing. He went up to Giannis because Giannis is such a nice man and a gentle guy, and he probably felt like he could whatever. And he never would have gone up to Charles Barkley, Draymond Green, Brick Mahorn back in the day, Dylan Brooks. He wouldn't go up to any of those guys. I don't know. Yeah, why don't you come on over here and hit this one. Let's have some fun. Hit that one.
And now I can't hear myself.
I don't know what you're doing. We'll get Ed Bird to get you started because I can only hear you a little bit.
This one work. Hey, look.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really.
They're both
Ed
on.
Bird, can you hit the mic here? Is Jay's mic turned up? Mic 2. There you go. Go ahead. Right there. Just stay there.
All right.
There you go. Just keep turning up mics until we get him on, Ed. All right, go ahead and talk.
Hi.
Go ahead and talk. Is he on now, Ed?
Yes. I can hear
good.
myself.
Okay. Anyway, so
I should turn these off.
Yeah. So anyway, you're not going up to like Barkley in his prime. Remember Barkley threw that guy through the window in that bar in Milwaukee?
Yeah.
Because that guy was talking stuff with him, and Barkley got. Remember Barkley's best line when they said, "But you don't have a bodyguard or anything, Chuck?" And he goes, "Oh no, I got 2 bodyguards, my left and my right.
Yeah.
I'm good."
Yeah. I still I don't know. My biggest thing about that, because I told Elijah, I read about it first. I was like, all right, I got to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And Giannis, for the first few seconds, again, you've just lost in overtime to end your season. So that's as a competitor, you're trying to process and digest that. And then here comes some dude in a jersey, but he's clearly not a player.
Mm-hmm.
And the look on Giannis's face is like, what the hell is happening here? And it's just a weird, squint, whatever. And then Tyrese's dad just got right up in his face, man.
I know, dude.
I don't, and I know he apologized. Good for the Pacers to say, you cannot come to any of our games.
Don't you wish the league though would have stepped in and handled it? Because when you're asking the team to take your star player's dad and you're basically banning him for X amount of time. If you're the league, shouldn't you go to the Pacers? Look, we're not going to put you on the hook for this. We're going to handle it as an NBA playoff game.
I think.
I agree with you. I give the Pacers a lot of props for standing up.
Well, I wonder if there wasn't communication with New York, and then Adam Silver's office said that, maybe the Pacers said, no, listen, we're going to handle. We got this.
I mean, I get it. Look, and Tyrese Halliburton handled it very well. He said my pops was wrong.
Yeah.
And everything.
He called him out. I mean, it was very calm.
But he did.
But he did call him out, and he did it in a very serious way.
But I guess my thought then, the next step is if you're the Pacers, though, okay, because the guy's got to be banned.
Yeah,
you can't let this go on. But if you're the Pacers, wouldn't you say, look, hey, league, can you do it for us? Because, this is our best player who we're paying a lot of money to.
I see your point.
And he's young, and we don't want to have anything. Or maybe they talked to Tyrese Halliburton before they did it and said, are you good with us doing this? Because we really have to.
I think they were probably like, hey, you realize.
And he probably went like this. Yeah, my dad. Yeah. Oh. But anyway, so. Yeah, good text. And you're right. Charles Barkley, they'd be picking up pieces of John Halliburton right now if he had done that to Barkley.
Yeah.
Pieces of him. 3 days later, I think that's a finger.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, I saved the greatest day in the history of the world for you because this is right up your alley.
Okay.
This happened this day in 2016.
Okay.
Leicester City happened.
Oh, is this the day they clinched in 2016? Yeah.
5,000 to 1 odds.
5,000 to 1.
And they won the English Premier
Never
League.
seen anything like it. And
Aren't they back near the bottom again?
They've been relegated.
Yeah.
They've been relegated twice now since then. Actually, also in between they won the FA Cup.
Do me a favor, 5,000 to 1 odds. Give me a comparison in the sports world we all watch and care about here in America. How crazy Leicester City winning the English Premier League at 5,000 to 1 would compare to.
I guess like right now, I like where did the Wizards start the NBA season?
And then they win the NBA championship?
Yeah. Or where, honestly, Terry, where like the Rockies are right now in baseball.
Okay.
Like, what's the odds of the Rockies winning this year's World Series?
So that's kind of what Leicester City was at 5,000
because Leicester was it was a good club. When you look back now, I will say, when you look back at the talent they had, the roster they had, and how many guys went on to big clubs, you realize like, oh, okay, like you do understand why and how. But, yeah, I mean, it was so just unforeseen. And I had to remind myself that who finished second that season.
Who did?
Arsenal.
Of course. What do you got coming up, pal?
We got a lot we're doing a lot of football today, a lot of, like, nitty-gritty, right up Elijah's alley analytics type stuff.
All right, cool. Post-game show coming up. Ed Bird, fine job, my man. Jay and Elijah next.